Hey everyone, this is Maritza from True North, and I want to introduce you to Elsa, who I'll be interviewing today. She is another facilitator with True North and quite a special one. She is she is a grown unschooler um, and has the experience of not having gone to school in our traditional way of thinking about it. And so we're here to find out more with her. So she's 17 and we're just wrapping up our first year of True North with the kids and families. And um, I want to point out that she's also a dancer and quite an amazing one, and a choreographer. So I want to say hi, Elsa. Thanks for being here.
Hello. Thank you.
so, um, so why don't we start with like, oh, what's what I guess maybe let's start with your experience of facilitating True North
Okay.
and what that's I don't know. I want to say what that's doing for you or why. I mean, is there a reason beyond having the connection that you do which is, I mean, your mom has helped bring this vision forth into manifestation, right? But it's not every daughter or child that's going to jump on board of whatever their parent is doing, right? So,
Yeah. So I actually way before True North was ever a thought for years now, I have had my own imagined scenario in which I open a self-directed learning school.
really?
And yes.
Oh, wow.
It I read a book when I was maybe 13 that it was a fantasy novel about this girl who goes to a democratic school. And I, having been raised unschooling, I knew about different kinds of schooling or not schooling, but I had actually never heard about like a democratic school specifically.
Uh-huh.
And so I thought this was like some kind of fantasy thing that the book author had written about. And I told my mom, oh my gosh, like this would be amazing, but it doesn't actually exist. And she was like, yeah, it does exist. There's none around here, but it does exist. And so, kind of my being brought up the way I was, and then this kind of fantasy novel I fell in love with came together. And ever since then, which has been multiple years now, I have thought about wanting to be a part of that in some way. And in that time, I also started teaching dance.
Mm.
And so I started relating to young children in that kind of
Okay.
mentor way.
So
And
you started teaching dance when you were 13?
I started assistant teaching dance when I was 10.
Oh my gosh.
And,
Okay.
I would started substitute teaching a couple years ago. And then this year, this whole school year, I have had my own classes.
Okay.
Um, so kind of when I started teaching dance, I realized how much I loved kids too.
Mm-hmm.
And so when True North came to be, it was kind of just a no-brainer for me that I was going to be involved. And
Okay.
it wasn't because my mom was doing it, although that made it an easier route for me to just
Yeah.
get in there because my mom was like the center hub person of this whole thing. But I think if someone else had brought it to being and I had heard about it, I would have also wanted to be involved.
Okay.
Um,
So why?
this, why?
Yeah.
Well, I have felt so grateful for the way I have been raised and the way I have gone about my learning and just the way I live my life, and having not gone to school being a very big part of that.
Mhm.
because going to school is a very big part of your life. So if you don't, that's
Yeah.
a big part too.
Yeah.
Um, and I just want to bring the things that I've gotten out of this to other children. I have it continues to grow in me, my kind of feeling out my knowledge about myself
Mhm.
in relationship to children and this. But over the last few years, I've really started to notice in myself how much I am touched by children and
Mm.
how much I am drawn to want to make their lives beautiful.
Mm.
It just feels like like what else is more important than making the children of this world happy and healthy and excited to learn and for life.
Yeah.
And I've gotten so much out of it. I just knew that I wanted to share it with other children.
Very
And
sweet.
so that's why, I guess.
Okay. Very sweet. Wow. So you really have a deep affinity for children, like helping them to thrive and grow. It's really
Yeah,
good
I
too. Yeah.
think so.
Yeah. Yeah. I think supporting the parents to thrive as well is also super important because if they're not thriving
Oh,
on
for
many
sure.
different levels, then that's going to impact the children as well. Just need to insert.
Definitely.
So, but
I have felt because of how young I am, I haven't been able to, I don't, I can maybe inspire or show the parents by being who I am
mhm.
as an example of what this could bring about for your children. But like
Yeah.
as a support person for the parents, I haven't felt like I'm in the position to do that just
Yeah.
because I'm such a child to
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah. No, that totally makes sense. And so, and not to be expected of you as well. But you do, but you also do it in your own way, just to call it out too, when you've supported the childcare process so that the parents can show up for the meetings,
oh yeah,
the meetings that we provide, right? So,
yes, for
so
sure.
you do it in your own way. But, well, so there's a bunch of questions like how, when did you start dancing? For
When did I start
how old were
dancing?
you? How old were you when you started dancing?
Well, besides a few little tiny classes that I took when I was maybe 3, which did not stick, I
Okay.
started dancing seriously when I was almost 8, when I was 7, almost 8.
Okay. And so at 10, you were assisting. And
Yes, and
then
I was on point by then too.
at
Um,
10. Okay.
yeah, I went on point at 10.
Is that something that's difficult to do or achieve?
So going on toe shoes is something that is only done by invitation by the director.
Oh, wow.
Because you can injure yourself extremely badly if you're not
Okay.
strong enough and have advanced enough technique to be able to do this because you're on the top of your toes in a wooden box.
Yeah.
And generally, people tend to go on point around 12. They say that it's important for you to at least have gotten to puberty because your back changes, like it starts swaying and doing different things, and your hips move around. So when you're little, it's just not healthy to do
Mm-hmm.
point,
Mm-hmm.
um, unless you're strong and you're ready to do that. And of course, you go into it slow. You do like I remember hours of foot exercises with TheraBands to get
Okay.
strong, and it goes slow, but it's something that is very exciting when you are young, and it is a
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah. So is that something you were super motivated to achieve or I mean, it sounds like, I mean, to get there, you had to have a lot of discipline and a lot of
Yeah,
inner strength to do that,
yeah.
right?
So when I first started dance, I the first year I just took like a couple classes, but by the second and third year that I was doing it, I was obsessed. I That's the only thing I wanted to do. I was dancing hours and hours a week. I took every class that the studio offered that I could, basically.
Uh-huh.
And to quote my dance director at one point, I was so excited about dance that she had to catch me with a butterfly net. So I like to quote that because I think it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it is. It's cute. So, but then, so it sounds like you found your passion.
Yeah, it felt like that really, really strongly for a very long time. And I still feel very, very passionate about it, but I'm also broadening my horizons a little bit right now with the coming of COVID and stopping dancing entirely for a little while and just trying to
Yeah.
find my footing.
Yeah.
I kind of discovered, oh wow, I have other interests, which I had not had the time to really delve into
Ah.
before. Like, for instance, it has been since COVID that I have taught myself to be a seamstress. I didn't
Oh,
do that before. Yeah.
really? Are you
I
serious? Like
no.
you,
I mean,
like,
yes,
yeah,
I am.
you just
I
go for it.
I learned to sew, you know, basic stuff when I was younger. Like I told you earlier yesterday,
Uh-huh.
I did a poetry and sewing kind of class club when I was 7,
Uh-huh.
8 years old. But that was hand stitching. I
Uh-huh.
did embroidery and making of like little felt pouches.
Mhm.
I did a little bit of like making felt clothes for my stuffed animals and
Okay.
stuff. But making clothes for myself and making my own patterns and using the machine, that's all been in the last year and a half.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Because I mean, yesterday when we were working together, you just whipped out this circle skirt, right? It's like
Yeah.
you're like "Doo, doo, 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 boo," and you're wearing it now. So, so
But yeah. So that was one thing. Painting was another thing that I had discovered that I really love since COVID. But I still am, my dance is number one up there basically because I feel it feels like nothing else to me when I'm dancing, and
Mm,
when I love choreographing too. A few years ago I had the opportunity to choreograph my first piece on a group of my peers,
uh-huh.
and it was performed on stage, and I that clicked. I love choreographing so much.
Oh
And
wow.
I used to choreograph dances. I used to go outside of my house, and we live on a tiny little street where like no cars ever come. So I would literally use the street as my stage, and I would choreograph dances, and I would be every dancer. So I would be like, okay, I'm coming on from stage right, and then I would do the whole thing over again, coming on from the other side,
Oh my
and I would
gosh.
reverse the moves, and I would like pretend to lift people and pretend to
Wow.
be lifted,
Oh
and
my
I would like
gosh.
costume it and like do the lighting. I have
Uh-huh.
notebook where I have formations written out from when I was little.
Uh-huh. Oh
I
my
was so into it.
wow. Wow. I'm just imagining, it sounds like you got to spend hours and hours, days on end with this, right? And I was just like,
I I honestly don't know. I just
well, I
remember
mean,
doing it.
yeah, I'm just having the thought that if you were in traditional school,
Oh, for sure.
eh,
Yeah.
you know, it'd be a
I
whole
would not.
different scene.
Yeah. Well, I know, for instance, in the program that I had the opportunity to finally choreograph on actual dancers when I was 13,
Uh-huh.
14, when I was 14, um, I everyone else in the program went to school. They were all in high school, and none of my friends choreographed dances because they were too busy. And a
Like,
lot of them were going to for their senior year just this last year, and then COVID came and they never got to. And I feel very grateful that I was able to. Like some of the younger dancers choreographed like their little younger dancer dances,
uh-huh.
but the um actually two of the oldest dancers that choreographed pieces were also homeschooled.
Oh, really?
um yes, and I just remember talking to my friends about and saying, oh, what, don't you want to choreograph a piece? And they're like, yes, of course I want to choreograph a piece, but I don't have any time. And because I remember when I choreographed my first piece, hours went into that, hours and hours, listening to the music,
Mm.
trial and error. I came up with like 3 different versions of a dance before I
Oh,
settled on which one I was going to teach to them.
yeah.
And the second piece I choreographed was even more because I was going into it deeper.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
which is also, it's also very different to choreograph for advanced dancers versus little kids, because now
Yeah.
I'm choreographing for little kids,
Right.
and that brings up its whole own set of things,
Yeah.
because you have to be like, how simple can I make this?
Right.
How slow can I move to this music?
Yeah.
How repetitive can I be without it being boring to the audience?
Yeah.
And also still exciting to the kids enough for them to want to memorize this choreography.
Yeah.
Whereas
Wow.
when you're choreographing for advanced dancers, you just throw at them in this complicated thing, they pick it up and they're going to remember it because they're, adept at doing that because they've practiced for so many years.
Hmm.
But it's really interesting to me.
So what's the, yeah, it's fascinating. So what are the age differences from the youngest to the oldest? I don't know.
So this year I have a class that the youngest kids in it are 6.
Okay.
And I have assistant taught with classes with kids as young as 4,
Okay.
where I like did some help choreography, but I was the assistant.
Okay.
And so, yeah, my youngest students this year are 6, and my oldest are 13.
Okay. And so is 6 the youngest you've choreographed for, like to have to
Yes,
figure out this? Okay. All right.
yes.
Yeah.
And then the oldest I've choreographed on was 18,
Okay.
because when I did my piece before COVID, I had like the seniors of the school in it,
Yeah.
and so that was really amazing.
Yeah. Wow. So I just want to clarify. So do you, do you, I know a little bit about your history, but others that are listening that may not. So you, have you ever gone to school? I mean, unschooling is about not going to school, right? So I just want to
Yeah.
clarify this to you.
So
So
I
you're
have,
watching.
yeah,
So
I've never been to school, never attended school except for the fall semester of kindergarten. And that's when my mom was like, no. She was, I know she talked about this in her interview with you
yeah,
whenever, last week or whatever. And
yeah,
she volunteered in the classroom at this, it was a charter school that you had to win a lottery to get into. It was supposed to be a really good school, and their kind of motto was all about, we're so creative and we learn with the children. She was like, oh great. And then she was volunteering in the classroom, and it was not what was going to work for us, and she just did not agree with how children were being, just normal kind of school stuff, coerced into doing certain activities and not having a super respectful relationship between the teachers and the children who are, and just the control over their bodies. And yeah,
yeah.
I remember when I started going to kindergarten, I started having nightmares, and it was, I'd never had that before. And when I started going to kindergarten, I started getting nightmares. So my mom was like, no, I don't think that that's gonna work.
Yeah. Wow.
Um,
Wow. And was that the only time you were in school?
I actually went to less than a week of 4th grade at an elementary school here,
Less
and
than
it
a week.
lasted less than a week. It lasted 4 days
Okay.
and no more.
What happened with that?
Um,
That's much older.
yeah, I was 10, or no, I was 9. I was 9.
Okay. So you
I
had
was,
already started your dance career.
yes. And that was something that actually happened. Like I remember having to rush like a maniac from school to dance and change in the car and just just that 1 week that I did it. It was very stressful. But what it didn't click, it was, to note, my choice to go to school. I decided, we toured some elementary schools and I picked that one. I was like, I want to go there. And after the first couple days, I was like, no, I don't. And so yeah, I remember the first day I was there, they showed me my desk, and during the math section of class, the teacher immediately calls on me, and and we'd had like a parent conference with them before I started, and told them that we had been like self-directed learners, unschoolers, and so I hadn't had formal teaching in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were kind of testing me. And the first day that I'd ever been in school, the teacher calls me up. She likes, how teachers do, they start the math problem,
Mm-hmm.
and then she goes, Elsa, come and show us how to finish this. I had no idea. I could have done the math in my head, but I didn't know how to stack the numbers, and she was using terms that I hadn't heard before. I had done lots of just like naturally learning math in the past, but I didn't know how to do that particular kind of equation. And she called me up to the board and just told me, like, you're gonna do it. And I didn't know how. And so then later that day, they took me into a side room and timed me and tested me on
What?
my reading, writing, and math skills.
Okay.
And I was like, what? No, that's not fun. So
They're probably trying to get an assessment of what you could do, not do. What kind of math? What kind do you remember what kind of math problem it was that they were trying to have you do?
I think it was now something that obviously I can just do with no issue, but it was kind of like fourth grade math. I don't it was when you were learning how to do the like stacked equations with like 3 triple-digit numbers on top of each
Okay.
other, and you like carry the one and
Okay.
whatever.
Yep.
And I didn't know what carry the one meant. I was, what?
Yeah.
Whereas I could do stuff in my head from when I was little. I loved counting coins. I loved doing that, so I would do lots of, and I loved baking too. So I learned how to use a measuring cup and put together cups, and how many teaspoons are in a cup, and all of that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right. So you had it kind of embedded in your life,
yeah,
things
as
you do
with
in your life, but not
everything
like as an abstract or
yeah, yeah.
topic.
Same with reading and writing, you know.
Yeah. So you had a fall semester of kindergarten and less than a week of fourth grade, and the rest of the
Yes.
time you've been home and doing your dance thing and choreography.
Yeah, and many, many innumerable other things.
Um, that's where the I could so that might be a good place to like segue into like what are some of those highlights of the things that you've done as an unschooler, you know?
Yeah. Oh boy, there's a lot.
Yeah, I imagine. I
um,
mean, it's just like how do you wrap up 17 years of living of life, you know?
yes, it is a lot, but I remember one of my favorite things to do when I was really little, quite young, in the beginning elementary kind of grades, and continue to now, but I loved to be read to, and we spent hours a day on the couch or on the back porch, and my parents reading to me. My dad would read to me in French,
Mm,
because from the time I was born, he has exclusively spoken to me and read to me in French.
wow.
So I was being um, raised bilingual.
Uh-huh.
Up until age about 4, my vocabulary was half and half.
Okay.
Uh, and then because we lived in Portland, Oregon, in the US, English kind of took over after that, and I didn't really speak French as much. But up until age 4, I was fluent in both, as much as a 4-year-old is.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, read, my parents read to me all the time. And that continued
Kind
up
of like, is that
until,
kind of like the snuggle in bed or on the couch under a cover read to you kind of thing, or like
yeah,
sit in the chair kind of read to you?
like every situation. I remember, I have distinct like bodily memories of like curling up against my dad, and he would read to me on the couch and in bed, also at bedtime. But I
Mhm.
wanted to be read to all the time, like all day, except for when I was playing, of course. But if I was feeling a little tired, I wanted to be read to.
Mm.
And that went up through the time when I started reading myself. And then I was reading myself all the time. And that I remember waking up in the mornings and being the first thing I grabbed was my book. And I was so excited. I would just run out and I would have breakfast. Before breakfast, even, I would just curl up and I would start reading. And then I would have breakfast and I would continue reading. And then I would read until lunch. And then I'd keep reading. And then I'd have dance.
Oh,
And then I'd
okay.
come home and I'd keep reading.
Okay. Wow.
And that's one of my memories, is just how much I loved stories and how much
Mm.
I loved reading what I wanted to read, because my friends were not reading what they wanted to read. They were reading what they were being told to read.
Uh-huh.
And um around the age, I remember just the whole time growing up, really, if I happened to be talking to my friends that went to school about books or reading,
Mm-hmm.
just them being so confused as to why I would want to read by myself for fun. And because they just did not relate to that. They were like, that's homework. Like, what?
Oh.
You know?
Oh,
I
wow.
have this I have this like memory emblazoned in my mind of going to dance
Uh-huh.
when I was probably around 10. And I like had my bag, because when I was that age and I was obsessed with reading, I took my book with me everywhere. Even if I couldn't read it, I brought it with me to
Right.
dance. And I put it by my water bottle and it
Okay.
was there. And I remember bringing Einstein's biography to dance.
Wow.
And one of my friends that I'm still friends with, she was like, "Oh, what class are you reading that for?" And I was like,
Oh.
"I'm reading it for fun." And she just looked so confused. She was like, "Why would you read Einstein's biography for fun?" And I was like, "Because it's interesting, because it's cool." I loved science when I was a kid, so
Uh-huh. Okay. I'm just
yeah.
like, hold on. I'm just like, so how old were you when you made that transition to being able to read yourself?
So that's an interesting question, because a lot of people think it was late. I started reading on my own. So I started being able to read like kind of easy read. I remember reading Dr. Seuss books
Mm-hmm.
when I was 7.
Okay.
And beginning when I was 6, but really just beginning.
Okay.
And then totally being able, I remember pulling out, we had like a stack, super big stack of like all these like funny Dr. Seuss rhymes and riddles kind of books, and my picture books. And I could read those when I was 7.
Uh-huh.
And then going into 8. And by the time I was 9, I was reading chapter books and novels.
Okay.
And it went so fast. It was within a matter of months
Yeah.
that I went from Dr. Seuss to, 500-page novels.
How fast was that? From 7, you started around 7 for the easy books to the 500 for the 500 page books
Yeah,
to,
by the time I was 9, I was reading long
okay, from
books.
7 to 9. Okay. So
And even when I was 8 was when I was super into poetry. So that was a big thing. I just I loved reading poetry.
Wow. Okay. I'm hearing like a life, like a young life that's like filled with passions. I mean,
Yes,
like, like you, like reading was a thing for you. And that
yeah,
started, so that
and
started from very early on with, having been read to with your parents
yeah,
to taking off with it on your own. And then the dance, the passion for that. And then you found poetry. I'm like, oh my gosh.
yeah. Poetry was a big thing, and when I was really young, kind of before I like narrowed in on poetry and dance, I loved making my own movies. And I also loved science. My favorite TV show was Nova Science Now with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I wanted to be an astrophysicist.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And I just could have watched Nova Science Now all day. I was obsessed. I was just like, ah, the atoms, the way things work, the past, the future, time, space continuum. What? I loved it.
So what happened with the science? Do you delve into that at all, or what?
Um, I actually am going to take an astronomy class at City College next year. I'm reading a book that is, I haven't read it before. It's one of my dad's favorite books, and he ordered it for me and was like, you have to read this. And it's definitely one of my favorite books now. It is A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson.
Okay.
And it is rekindling my just like, oh, science. I love it. I, every night I like can't stop reading it because I'm just
Wow.
it blows my mind.
Wow. Wow.
Um, it's kind of been, because self-directed learning is not fragmented like normal schooling is, where it's this is this subject and that's that subject.
Yep.
Nothing was fragmented for me, so it's hard for me to say, well, I moved away from science at that age and then I came back to it around then. It just was part of what I was interested in. It just was part of, me learning. I've always been interested in it, and just like many other things, it was just woven into my day-to-day life and woven into my knowledge, and I can't say that I drifted away and came back because it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
kind of part of who I
Part
am.
of who you are, right?
Yeah.
Right. Um, what about like history
History.
and
So,
and then we'll might as well just add the math piece too, because I imagine some parents would want to know, well,
yes.
how did that work?
Yes.
You
I
left
am sure that
school.
people definitely are curious about the math. Um, and so kind of like with the different subjects of school, history, math, science, English, the different things that are put into boxes. It was all very natural for me. I would say, except for math, because up to a certain extent, because math was cool. It just was woven into my day to day up to a certain extent,
Mhm.
basic, um, just like normal kinds of math skills, counting money, doing baking, doing,
Mhm.
all the different kinds of
Daily,
math that you do in daily life,
right?
I had just had incorporated. But I remember when I was starting around 9, I would say, starting to feel some peer pressure from my friends about not knowing my times tables.
Hmm.
And
How old were,
I
how old were you about that? Around then?
I remember being 9
Okay.
when an incident emblazoned in my memory actually kind of made it was like a moment in which I was like, I'm gonna come back to this. I'm gonna teach myself math. I wasn't gonna do it right then, because I was like, that's too boring. I don't have the vision to do that. Whereas some kids totally do. Like
Yeah.
I've seen kids at True North who are 7, 8, 9,
Yeah.
who are so into math,
Yeah.
and they pull out, formulas, and I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
I that's so cool. That
Yeah.
was not me. Math is not my thing that I was into.
Yeah.
But when that incident kind of happened, and like just different things building up with my friends kind of flexing their math skills on me and me being like, what? When
Uh-huh.
I was like 9, I would say,
Uh-huh.
um, I started feeling a little bit insecure about my math skills. And looking back, I don't think that that was a bad thing at all, because that is what led me to wanting to teach myself math in the more schoolish way. And I did.
So that's like a really huge thing to feel like you can actually teach yourself something that you don't know
Yes, yes, that was a
versus
big.
versus like going out to someone and another adult or a class that you would have to
Yeah,
take, right? Does that ever occur to you that you should go out and teach or
yes. Actually, my mom, when I started kind of voicing a little bit of that insecurity around math,
Mhm.
um, which I didn't sit her down and be like, Mom, I am insecure about my math skills. But because we were just around each other so much and we were so close,
Yeah.
she was just able to be in tune with me and kind of felt it maybe a little
Okay.
bit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Your mom.
remember her looking on the path list, the like homeschoolers email list,
Okay.
and looking for maybe like a fun math tutor.
Mhm.
And she like found a couple different ones, and she asked me, she was like, I found these people that are doing like some fun math classes, like, do you want to do it? And I was like, no. And she was okay, because she wasn't going to make me do anything that I didn't want to, because she
Yeah.
trusted process.
Yeah. She trusted your own inner knowing. So why
Yeah.
why did you say no?
Well, for one thing, up until the point I decided to teach it to myself,
Uh-huh.
I was very against it. My mom actually, because she respected me not wanting to take a class, maybe because I didn't want to be embarrassed in front of other kids or something. I
Uh-huh.
don't know what went through her head,
Okay.
but I was, young. But she thought, oh, maybe she would like to learn it with me. So my mom, you know, kind of was like, oh, let's just try doing some like basic math, kind of more teaching it to me. And I hated it so much. I was not going to take it one bit. It lasted for a little while. Um,
Mm.
and what I got out of it was 3 times 7 is 21, 2 times 9 is 18. And I remember those two from that specific experience. But I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. And my mom was like, okay, because it resulted in us in having huge arguments. And immediately my mom was like, I am not going to put my relationship with my daughter in danger over times tables. Like, I'm just not going to do it.
Mm.
So, um, it was then still a little while. Of course, through this whole time, I was just like still growing in my math skills naturally. But when I was 13, I decided, you know what? It's about time. So I got, and at that age is when you're supposed, like in school, you'd be learning algebra.
Uh-huh.
So I got myself an algebra textbook, which
Uh-huh.
was one of the most boring things I have ever witnessed. But for a year,
Uh-huh.
I taught myself math out of a textbook.
Wow.
And for the beginning, I remember at first being really excited, like, I'm gonna do this. I made myself a pacer with like every week of the year written out in like a grid and being like, this is the chapter I'm gonna do that week.
Wow.
And at first I held to it,
Uh-huh.
and then I started getting behind. It snowballed a little bit, and by the end of the year, I had multiple chapters to get through in about 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And I was I was upset at myself, but I really wasn't that upset because um I've always felt that when I just let myself, now that I'm older, I tend to overthink things, but when I was younger, I didn't. I just followed what I wanted to do in the moment,
Okay.
as the self-directed learners do.
Okay.
And now looking back, I don't, I never have regretted the choice I make in the moment, ever. Even if it resulted in me being a little bit upset at myself later. In that instance, I was like, okay, now I have whatever, 7 chapters to get through in the next 2 weeks. And I have this super clear memory, which wasn't that long ago, it was when I was 13, but of those 2 weeks, I was like, I have a deadline and I'm gonna do this. And
Wow.
I did. I would wake up in the morning,
Uh-huh.
I would get my textbook, I would go out, sit in the living room, and it made me feel so good. I I started out, when I was younger, feeling like I hated math, and when I was doing throughout that year, I also was kind of like, oh, I still hate math. But when I got to that end of the year and I gave myself the deadline and I was going to stick to it,
Oh,
I felt so good. It felt so good. I
wow.
spent whole days, waking up in the morning, working on it before breakfast until late after dinner into the night, with my like light in my bedroom, working on algebra and copying down the formulas. And I have my notebooks that are filled with my notes from that year.
Yeah.
And after I did that, um I felt so proud of myself. I felt so accomplished.
Yeah.
And even though I had done, something similar in teaching myself things
Mhm.
innumerable times, I hadn't done it with something so academic
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And it felt so good. I had doubted myself when I was younger. I felt insecure about my abilities with it.
Mhm.
And when it came time that I wanted to be able to do this thing, I did it.
Mhm.
And I realized that if I wanted to do something, I had the power in my own hands to do it.
Wow.
And it was so refreshing and
Yeah.
it was so empowering.
Yeah.
And then the last couple of years, after that year, I actually decided that it might be nice to do it with some other people. So I took
Okay.
some online classes.
Ah, okay.
But that first year, I was like, no way am I going to do it with other people. I want to do this myself.
You totally did it solo. So it was just you and the
Yes,
algebra book.
exactly.
Oh my
Which
gosh.
now I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. I'm impressed by myself looking back. But yeah,
Oh,
that was something big for me. That was a big
yes.
turning point because
Yeah.
I realized, um, there had been not a big question, but a small question in the back of my mind, starting kind of in my middle school kind of years of, I've never done this kind of schoolish way of learning. If I were to try, would I be able to? And that answered my question.
Okay.
And then I wasn't afraid to sign up for city college classes starting when I was 14. I
Um,
signed up for city college classes. I got A's. And it was, not that grades matter to me, but I
yeah.
know that some people would be curious
Yeah.
to know that.
Yeah.
Another thing to mention is that when I taught myself algebra, I was able to give myself a grade. And that was such an empowering thing too, because I was
Uh,
able to assess my own ability. I did not just give myself an A. I gave myself a B. And I was like, yeah, I slacked. I did not keep up with my own pacemaker
Uh,
throughout
right,
the whole year. But
right.
by the end, I knew how to do algebra. So
And manage your time
yeah,
and meet a deadline and like, oh my gosh.
I
And learn.
discovered through that deadlines are very important for me.
Yeah, and to be able to hold yourself to them, that's a huge thing as well. It's like, oh my gosh, how it makes me curious. Like, how did you do that? Like, how did you hold yourself accountable to yourself? Because you could have just like said, no, forget it.
Yeah. Um, that's a good question. And part of it is that, well, at that time, I was signed up with Inspire Charter School before it became Heartland Charter School. So I met with a homeschool teacher once a month,
Okay.
and she was great. She had actually, it was interesting for me um, to do that because she was a homeschool teacher. She was not an unschooler.
Okay.
And me and my mom kind of exposed her to that through that. And
Yeah.
she didn't try to control me. And that was something actually that kind of taught me, oh, I really enjoy educating people about this way of doing things too. And so she was kind of holding me to a deadline too,
Okay.
but um, she was not one to force anything on me,
Okay.
um, because my mom made it clear that that wasn't going to be acceptable in the first place, because my mom would not force anything on me. So it was really, for me, a self agreement. Like, I didn't want to let myself down, and I um knew it almost felt like kind of like coming of age thing of
Uh-huh.
like, I want to be able to do something if I decide I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to let myself down,
Yeah.
because that will set a precedent. And if I let myself down the first time that I really really want to do something, then maybe I'll let myself down again.
Yeah.
And um I I actually, of course, the first time we do things, it is natural to not be able to do them. And
Right.
that has happened to me many times. Um, and I also know that I am a very determined person, and I'm a little bit competitive too,
Uh-huh.
even with myself.
Okay.
And so some people aren't like that, and I
Yeah.
think that's fine too.
So then that leads me been this other question that's been kind of lurking in the background too, that so it's like, I mean, you've already accomplished so much, right? You had taught yourself to read, you're doing the dance thing, you're choreographing by 10, right? Or definitely by 13. So I mean, you already had these other areas that you were really excelling in. And here you are wanting to really like not let yourself down. So it's just like I'm like there's this question like what motivates you? Like what are the values that motivate you, or do you know?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Uh-huh.
Um, and something that I should probably think about more for myself.
Hmm.
Actually, um, when I was younger,
Yeah.
I just did things because I felt like it. And I didn't force myself to finish things when I was younger, like in the elementary school grades. I loved to write stories when I was little,
Uh-huh.
and I almost never finished them, ever.
Okay.
And I then, when I was probably around that same age, when I was maybe like 11, I
Uh-huh.
finished my first story. I wrote a chapter book. And then I wrote 3 short stories about fairies and lambs. We won't go into that, but that was
Tease there.
that was another thing that I remember doing, deciding I was going to finish a story. And I feel that that is something very natural with age, that when you're little, it's natural to not have that motive to finish things. And as you get older, it is natural to start wanting to really finish things, to bring things through to their full fruition.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I now, for instance, just in the last year, I have struggled with motivation a little bit. I have so many ideas, so many different projects that I have scrawled out in my notebooks of, I want to do this and this, and I want to make this video, and I want to, make these, I've like a list, this long of sewing projects I want to do, and
Mm-hmm.
dances I want to choreograph, and videos I want to make, and photography, and just a lot
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
And I've struggled with motivation, and that is something that I feel will be a journey for me for the rest of my life. Um, but something I think that helps me is to kind of clarify to myself, why am I doing this?
Mm.
What is it that I am accomplishing for myself?
Uh-huh.
What is this giving to me?
Uh-huh.
For instance, when I did the math, teaching myself math thing,
Yeah.
it was, I want to know that I am just as capable as everyone else. I want to know that I, you know, am as smart. I want to know that I have equal knowledge in this area, and that not even that I want to be able to do it as well as others, like keeping up with it, or being able to like do well on tests or whatever, but for myself, like I want to be able to know that I'm able to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and that I can also walk away from it and come back to it again
Mm.
and do that again.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to take it to the next level, I can come back and do that. And
Okay.
I can, and um really clarifying, what is this giving me? And why am I excited to do this? What is it going to give me in the end result?
Yeah.
And sometimes, like with creative endeavors, that is a little unclear.
Yeah.
And that's something to kind of explore.
Yeah.
And when you're little, that doesn't really apply, because you're just, the reason is because you want to. And that is perfectly good enough reason. I did so many things when I was little, and not that little, that I just accomplished because I was enjoying it. And now that I'm older and I have more ideas and more options and just more like critical thinking, and
Mm-hmm.
just also more mental blocks too,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
have kind of been formed um, after kind of like the innocence and just non-questioning of selfness that goes away with becoming more of an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so now it's actually harder for me than when I was younger
Okay.
to um, dive into stuff.
Okay.
And but then it's even more rewarding when I do.
Right. You have to be
And
kind of become more selective and more also questioning of really choosing what it is that you want to put your time and attention to.
yeah, which is exactly what's natural at this stage. It's when people start going to college and deciding, what their majors are going to be. And it's when people start asking themselves questions like, why am I here? What
Yeah.
am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
Where am I going?
Yeah.
What am I going to eliminate?
Yeah.
You know?
It's huge questions. And it's, so many kids are in school being fed whatever it is that they are told to learn, but you've had this inside out process of
Mm-hmm.
just exploring so many different things and disciplines in depth, right? And really taking off with them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like,
And
it's amazing.
um, yeah, it's been very it's something that I've noticed, actually, that just came to mind that I want to mention.
Okay.
is that in school, everything is paced out. It's like you start learning things when you're this age and you're going to end learning it when you're this age. And between that time period, it is perfectly spread in one layer. Every year you're going to take a history class
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be this time period, then this time period, then this time period.
Mm-hmm.
And when like thinking back and also now, I just so clearly see that that is not natural. You don't have the equal amount of interest in one thing for 12 years. Every day, you don't have that amount of energy for that subject.
Yeah.
It's something that ebbs and flows,
Yeah.
and that you just go in and out of, and that's okay
Yeah.
because you go so in depth, and then maybe it looks like on the outside that you don't think about it for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
but it's embedded in you because
Yeah.
you went so in depth that one time and
Yeah.
because you wanted to do it that one
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. It's like
And
yeah, you went in with this whole curiosity thing, and it's just like you're like exploring and and it's I mean, there's the intellectual learning that happens, but there's also like this deep dive where you're like immersed in it, right? And it's
oh,
just
for sure.
and
Yeah,
and it's like you've got this like 3D experience with it, right? Because you're just
exactly.
diving in.
It also, of course, when you're in school, you're sitting in a desk,
Yeah,
and so it's all going through your ears and your eyes, and it's
yeah,
just supposed to sit in your brain.
yeah,
And when you do things organically, of course it's going to involve your body,
yeah.
even if it seems totally unrelated. Like if you are making your whatever it is, like I'm remembering that I made this scroll that was a timeline of like historical events,
Uh-huh.
literally like on this huge long strip of piece of paper.
Oh
And I
wow.
remember making it, laying on the carpet on my stomach. And that seems like totally unrelated, you know?
Yeah,
But
no.
but it's not, because
Yeah,
when you get what you're doing with your body, when you are
yeah,
doing something with your mind, it is totally connected.
yeah,
And and if you are choosing what you're doing with your body when you're learning something
yeah,
intellectual,
yeah,
that affects what's going into your head intellectually, because it has the background of I'm choosing what to do with myself right now, you
right,
know?
right. So it's kind of like, I mean, underneath all of that, it's like you're making sense of life, right? Bringing
Yeah,
meaning into your life, into why you're even here, right? Uh,
yeah.
and like, I I don't know. This may be a cheesy question, but
That's okay.
you can. But I'm curious because there's still this question of like, okay, so what is motivating you to follow what you follow, or so I'm just kind of curious, like who are your three superheroes?
Ah, who
You know,
my
who do you really look up to? Like who do you like who's influenced you, kind of thing, or
Yeah. Um, that's a good question. Of course, there's people in the dance field because that has been such a big thing for me.
like famous dancers, or like in your immediate dancer?
No, my teachers.
Okay.
My teachers. So I had one, of course, the director of my dance studio. Is she's like she's literally like my dance mom. You know, she I love her so much, and
Mhm.
she was is like it's she's everything to me in so
Okay.
many ways. And we got so close
Hmm.
before she left. She retired and moved to Oregon
Okay.
now, but um we got so close because I assistant taught with her since I was 10.
Right.
And so she was a one woman show. She ran the whole studio on her own. She was quite the character. I don't necessarily strive to be like her. She was
Uh-huh.
very old fashioned, you know, but she was a rock for me since the time I was very young. And another dance teacher I had who influenced me so much was the teacher that I started taking with when I went on point, because she was teacher that she was like the advanced level ballet teacher that you move up to her classes when you begin point.
Okay.
And she terrified me at first.
Uh-huh.
And by the end, I just love her so much. And I babysat her baby too, and I love him so much.
Oh,
And we just got so close, and she has influenced me in so many ways. She has, you know, um, been hard on me and loved me in just the right amounts, you know, and without her, I wouldn't be who I am.
wow.
Um, and um, I have, through actually this last year of True North coming to be, I have seen a side of my mom that I have never seen before,
Mhm.
which was this. She's always had her own businesses. She's always been, you know, self-employed, but I'd never seen her build a community from the ground up, including the technicalities of it, including the people side of it, including the creative side of it.
Mhm.
And actually, just through this last year, I've seen that in her and been like, wow, I want to be able to be that cool one day and be able to just still learn so much when I'm an adult, you know. And that's how it is also. I consider self-directed learning not to, you never graduate from self-directed learning. You, because you're just living your life. And I just, you continue to learn. And I saw her do that, and it's just really inspiring.
Yeah, it's
So,
hugely inspiring and such a huge gift. I mean, I think that's one of the, you said it so beautifully, but I just like, I mean, our parents are our first teachers in so many ways. And I'm just like so in awe and like curious and grateful that you got to have this family life, right?
oh yeah, for
And
sure.
then still, I mean, it's just like we don't, like we almost give our best selves to wherever it is that we work, right? And then
Uh-huh.
we come home and we chill out and to get our errands done and clean the house, and then we have to go back to work, right? And then it's like so it's just like yeah, we give our best selves to work, and then the kids don't get to have see what it takes to develop those skills, right?
Yeah. I
But when I realized that for you, that you got to watch your mom do this, it's like, oh my gosh, what an
yeah,
incredible gift to
all the behind the
that.
scenes.
Yeah, yeah, from everything, and you're, I'm sure it's some part of you is still like imbibing all of that, whether it's conscious or not,
Yeah.
but to have seen it and experience it.
Yeah, I definitely feel like seeing her do that, and also conversations we have had about related topics. Um, just seeing her do that increases the knowledge that if one day I want to start something, I can.
Yeah.
And I actually had, during COVID, I came up with this whole business model idea that I think would be really amazing, and it's on the back burner. It's in there,
Okay.
and it's
Awesome.
um but yeah, I wouldn't trade the relationship that I have built with my mom um for anything. And that goes right in hand with me being an unschooler, I feel like. um because we spend so much time together, and um we trust each other so deeply.
Wow.
She has never had we've never had arguments about what I want to do or what I don't want to do, because we're on the same page, because she has my best well-being in in heart, yeah, at heart, and I do too, you know, and she's never had to have conflicts with me, and I've never had conflicts with her. And that's something that you know, you hear parents griping over their teenagers.
Yeah.
Oh, they're teenagers. They're so terrible. As soon as they're teenagers, they won't listen to you. They run amok,
Yeah.
and you don't know how to talk to them anymore, and they don't relate to you. We're best friends. We are best friends.
Mm.
And I would never
Mm.
trade that for anything. And I and it's because of the trust that has been built around the way we've approached things together,
Yeah.
that I've just grown up in this container that she's held of, I trust you to make decisions for yourself. I trust that you know what is good for you. I trust that you will respect me if I respect you.
Mm.
And it has just built this bond that is just, you know, I have friends who have not good relationships with their mom, and of course they love them, but they have rough times and like, you know, like power struggles with
Mm-hmm.
their moms,
Yeah.
and it just it has never happened, and it'll never happen for me, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's a big thing. That's
That's
a big thing.
huge. That's a huge thing. That's a huge thing. And I know we're way over the hour that I thought we'd stay to, but this was way too interesting of a discussion to stop it early. So, but this feels like a really good place to bring it to an end. And
Yeah.
it's just like, wow. Yeah. Thank you so much. I guess I have to ask, is there anything that's like wants to be said? Anything else that you want to say real quickly before we bring it to an end?
I nothing leaps to mind, you
Okay.
know?
Okay.
Nothing
Good.
leaps to mind.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So thank you so much for taking this time and like sharing yourself and your journey. It sounds so amazing and
Yeah. Thank you for
glad.
your time and your questions.
Yeah. So good. All right. So until next time.
Yeah. Until next time.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.